The emergency lights bathed the council chamber in red. Captain Taemin Park stood at attention, while holographic images of destruction played across the massive screens. Ships torn apart, colonies abandoned, entire worlds gone silent. The alien delegates around him trembled, some openly weeping. "The Vareth have returned," Council Speaker Voth announced, his insect-like mandibles clicking with distress. "After 300 cycles of silence, they have breached the neutral zone." Taemin watched the recordings. The Vareth ships looked wrong somehow, as if they absorbed light instead of reflecting it. They moved through space like living shadows, and wherever they went, silence followed. Not the peaceful kind. The kind that came after screaming stopped. Ambassador Kyung-Soo Lee, the human representative, leaned toward Taemin. "Have you been briefed on what the Vareth are?" "No, sir. We just arrived yesterday." Kyung-Soo's face was grave. "They're predators. But they don't hunt for food. They hunt for fear itself. They feed on terror like we breathe air. Every species in this galaxy has stories about them. Bedtime warnings. Ancient nightmares. They're real and they're coming." The briefing continued for 2 hours. Taemin learned that the Vareth hadn't always been hostile. Thousands of years ago, they tried to communicate with other species, but their very presence caused panic. Their appearance triggered primal fear responses in every known species. Eventually, they stopped trying to talk and simply started hunting. "All border worlds are being evacuated," Voth continued. "However, we need eyes on their movements. We need to know where they're going and why they've broken their isolation now." Every delegate looked away when Voth's compound eyes scanned the room. No one wanted this assignment. It was a death sentence. "The Vareth didn't leave survivors to tell tales. The humans will establish a monitoring station," Kyung-Soo said suddenly. The chamber erupted in protest. Several delegates argued that humanity was too new to the council, too inexperienced. Others insisted it was cruel to send them on a suicide mission, but Kyung-Soo was firm. "We volunteered. Captain Park's ship, the Harmony's Echo, will set up the station on Threshold 9. We'll report everything we observe." Later, aboard his ship, Taemin called his senior staff together. Dr. Ji Woo-han, the xenobiologist, looked pale. Security Officer Bora Kim kept checking her weapons. Even though everyone knew guns were useless against the Vareth, Communications Officer Sung-Ho Choi hadn't stopped sweating since the briefing ended. "I know you're all scared," Taemin said. "I am too. But this is important. The Council needs this information to protect billions of lives." "We're going to die," Sung-Ho said flatly. "The records show the Vareth don't take prisoners. They drive you insane with fear and then feed on your terror until there's nothing left." Ji-woo cleared her throat. "Actually, I've been reading the historical records. No human has ever encountered a Vareth before. We don't know how they'll affect us specifically. Our fear responses might be different." "Different how?" Bora asked. "Fear is fear. Maybe or maybe not." Ji-woo pulled up brain scans. "Humans domesticated wolves thousands of years ago. We took apex predators and turned them into companions. Our fear responses evolved differently because we learned to live alongside things that could kill us. It's worth considering." Taemin appreciated Ji-woo's optimism even if he didn't quite believe it. Still, orders were orders. They would go to Threshold 9, set up the monitoring station, and hope for the best. Before departure, Taemin made a decision that broke regulations. He brought Max aboard. Max was his golden retriever, technically registered as an emotional support animal. The dog had been with him for 6 years, through the academy, through his first command, through every difficult moment of his career. Station regulations didn't allow pets, but Taemin filed the proper exemption paperwork and crossed his fingers. When Max trotted onto the bridge, tail wagging, several crew members actually smiled for the first time in days. "Is that a dog?" Engineer Hyojin Nam asked, kneeling down to pet him. "I haven't seen one since I left Earth." "His name is Max," Taemin said. "He's part of the crew now." Medical Officer Daeun Yoon looked concerned. "Captain, if the Vareth come, won't he be in danger?" "We'll all be in danger. At least Max might keep our spirits up while we wait." The journey to Threshold 9 took 4 days. The planet was barely habitable, located right on the edge of the neutral zone. Perfect for observation, terrible for survival. The crew worked efficiently to set up the monitoring station, but everyone felt the weight of what was coming. On the second night at the station, Sung-Ho received a message from a nearby alien outpost. They were evacuating. The Vareth were moving faster than predicted. They'd be in scanning range within 48 hours. Taemin authorized a message to the council, confirming they were in position. Kyung-soo's response was brief. Stay as long as you can. Every minute of data helps. May fortune favor you. It wasn't exactly encouraging. The next day, the sensor alarm screamed. Something massive was approaching from dark space. The readings made no sense. The object's mass kept fluctuating. Its energy signature didn't match any known propulsion system. And it was moving impossibly fast. That's them, Jiwoo whispered, staring at the screen. That's a Vareth ship. As they watched, the thing emerged from the darkness between stars. It looked like someone had taken a ship and wrapped it in living shadow. Parts of it seemed to phase in and out of normal space. Looking at it too long made Taemin's eyes hurt. Bora activated all defensive systems, which felt pointless. Their weapons were designed for conventional threats, not nightmares made real. The Vareth ship stopped 3,000 kilometers away. Just sat there in space watching them. Or at least that's what it felt like. Being watched by something hungry. Then the whispers started. First, it was just Sung-ho who heard them. Voices in the empty corridor outside communications. Calling his name. When he went to investigate, there was nothing there. Then Hyejin reported seeing someone in the engine room. Her brother. Her brother who died 5 years ago in a shuttle accident. It's starting, Jiwoo said, reading her instruments. They're projecting some kind of empathic field. It's designed to trigger fear responses in our brains. They're softening us up. Taemin felt it too. A creeping dread that had nothing to do with rational thought. His hands shook. His heart raced. Every shadow seemed to move when he wasn't looking directly at it. The station suddenly felt much smaller, much more isolated, much more like a tomb. But through it all, Max just wagged his tail. The dog didn't seem bothered at all. He trotted around the station like always, occasionally barking at nothing, his tail making happy swishing sounds. Why isn't the dog affected? Bora asked, watching Max sniff curiously at a corner that had been making her skin crawl. He doesn't understand fear the same way we do, Jiwoo said slowly. Dogs evolved alongside humans. They trust us to handle threats. As long as we're not panicking, he figures everything is fine. But we are panicking, Sung-ho pointed out. Not panicking enough, Jiwoo replied. Look at us. We're scared, but we're still functioning, still working. The records say other species freeze completely when the Vareth get close. They become paralyzed prey. We're not. Taemin hadn't thought about it that way, but she was right. He was terrified, but his hands still worked. His mind still functioned. He could still give orders and think strategically. Whatever the Vareth were doing, it wasn't working as well on humans as it did on other species. The sensor alarm blared again. Something was coming through their hull, not breaking through. Passing through like the metal wasn't even there. 3 shapes materialized on the observation deck. The Vareth had boarded their station. Taemin grabbed his sidearm, knowing it was useless. Bora was already there, weapon drawn. They moved toward the observation deck together. When they entered, Taemin understood why every species in the galaxy feared these creatures. The Vareth were massive, at least 3 meters tall. Their bodies were covered in chitinous black plates that seemed to absorb light. They had too many eyes arranged in patterns that hurt to look at, their limbs bent in wrong directions. And when they moved, reality seemed to flinch. One of them turned its attention to Taemin. He felt its gaze like physical pressure. Terror flooded through him. Childhood nightmares. The fear of being alone in the dark. The dread of being hunted. Every primal fear his ancestors ever felt came crashing down at once. He raised his gun with shaking hands, knowing it wouldn't matter. That's when Max pushed past his legs and barked excitedly at the aliens. The Vareth froze, all 3 of them. They stared at the dog with what might have been confusion. Max dropped into a playbow, his front legs stretched forward, his rear end up in the air, tail wagging frantically. He barked again, clearly inviting them to play. In that moment, watching his dog try to make friends with the galaxy's most feared predators, Taemin had a wild thought. Maybe humans really were different after all. The largest Vareth tilted its head in a way that made Taemin's stomach turn. The movement was too smooth, too fluid, like the creature had no bones. Its many eyes focused on Max, who continued wagging his tail and making playful little jumps. What is this? The voice came from everywhere and nowhere. It resonated inside Taemin's skull rather than his ears. The words were in Old Galactic, the ancient trade language. What manner of creature approaches without fear? Taman swallowed hard. His training said to stay silent, don't engage, wait for backup. But his training never covered a situation where his dog was trying to play with cosmic horrors. His name is Max. Taman managed to say. He's a dog. A companion animal from Earth. The Vareth leaned closer to Max. The dog's tail wagged harder. He sniffed at the alien's leg plating with obvious interest. Companion? The word seemed to confuse the creature. You travel with prey animals? He's not prey. He's family. All three Vareth turned to look at Tamin now. The weight of their attention was crushing. He felt his knees weaken. Beside him, Bora had lowered her weapon, but her hands were shaking so badly she couldn't have aimed if she tried. Jiwoo's voice came over the communication system. Captain, I'm reading massive empathic projections from those things. They're trying to make you feel terror, but the readings are fluctuating. It's like they're confused. One of the smaller Vareth reached out a claw toward Max. Taman's heart stopped, but Max just sat down and offered his paw like he'd been taught. The claw and the paw touched. The Vareth jerked back as if shocked. It made a sound that might have been surprise or might have been pain. The translation matrix couldn't interpret it. What is this sensation? The creature demanded. Where is its fear? Dogs don't really do fear like that, Jiwoo said, emerging from the corridor. She was terrified. Taemin could see it in her eyes, but she walked forward anyway. They evolved alongside humans. We domesticated them from wolves over thousands of years. We bred them to trust us, to be happy, to want to make friends. The largest Vareth moved closer to Jiwoo. She stopped breathing for a moment but held her ground. You altered a predator species to remove fear? The alien's voice carried something that might have been wonder. For what purpose? Companionship, Jiwoo said simply. We were lonely. They were lonely. So we became friends. The Vareth were silent for a long moment. Then the largest one spoke again, and this time its voice carried through the entire station. I am Kratos, elder of the hunting caste. For 10,000 cycles, I have harvested fear across this galaxy. In all that time, across hundreds of worlds and thousands of species, nothing has ever approached me with anything but terror. He looked down at Max, who was now sniffing his feet. What is this feeling that emanates from this creature? Joy, Taemin said. He's happy to meet you. Happy. Kratos tested the word. We have no word for this in our language. Only variations of fear and hunger. Over the next several hours, something unprecedented happened. The Vareth didn't attack. They didn't leave. Instead, they stayed and asked questions. Hundreds of questions. They wanted to know everything about dogs, how humans found wolves, how long domestication took, why humans would want to live with predators, how dogs could be so trusting, what joy felt like, what happiness meant. Sung-ho set up translation equipment in the observation deck. Hae-jin brought coffee for the human crew, though no one knew what to offer the aliens. Da-yoon monitored everyone's vitals, concerned that the prolonged exposure to Vareth would cause psychological damage. But something strange was happening. The longer the Vareth stayed, the less frightening they became. Taemin still felt uneasy, but it was manageable now. Like being near a tiger at the zoo, aware of danger but not paralyzed by it. Max, oblivious to the historic nature of the moment, was having the time of his life. He'd discovered that the Vareth would pet him if he sat nicely. Their claws were surprisingly gentle. He kept rotating between all three aliens, making sure each got equal attention. Your species domesticated predators, Kratos said slowly, but you are predators yourselves. I sense it in your structure. Binocular vision, grasping hands. You are hunters. We were, Jiwoo agreed. Our ancestors hunted to survive. But we also learned to farm, to cooperate, to build societies. We kept some animals as companions because it made life better for everyone. Better. Another word that seemed to puzzle the Vareth. We do not understand better. We understand hunger and satisfaction, fear consumed and emptiness to be filled. The third Vareth, who hadn't spoken yet, made a chittering sound. Kratos translated. Shinra asks if all humans have these companion animals. Many do. Dogs, cats, birds, fish, even some reptiles. We like having other species around us. Why? All three aliens asked in unison. Taemin thought about how to answer. Because we love them. Because they love us. Because life is better when you're not alone. Love. Kratos' voice carried a strange resonance. Another concept we lack words for. You are saying that predator and prey can choose to coexist? We're saying that predator and prey are just labels, Jiwoo replied. They're not destinies. Wolves became dogs. Wildcats became house cats. Species can change if they want to. The Vareth were silent again. Max yawned and lay down, resting his head on Kratos' foot. The ancient alien looked down at the dog with an expression that might have been confusion, or might have been something else entirely. Then alarms blared throughout the station. Sung-ho's voice came over the speakers. Captain, we have incoming ships. Multiple contacts. It's a council fleet. Taemin rushed to the command center. The screens showed dozens of warships dropping out of faster-than-light travel. They were forming a battle formation around Threshold 9. This is Ambassador Yoon Seo-song of the Galactic Council, a voice announced. Human Station, please respond. We have detected Vareth in your vicinity and are prepared to engage. Taemin grabbed the communication panel. Ambassador, wait! Do not fire! The Vareth are here, but they're not attacking. We're in communication with them. There was a long pause. Captain Park, please repeat that. Did you say you're communicating with the Vareth? Yes, ma'am. For the last several hours. They came aboard and we've been talking. My dog... He paused, realizing how insane this was going to sound. My dog befriended them. Another pause, even longer. Captain, are you under duress? Are they forcing you to say this? Kratos appeared beside Taemin, moving with that unnerving fluid grace. I will speak to the council. Taemin handed over the communication controls, hoping this wouldn't start an interstellar war. This is Elder Kratos of the Vareth, the alien said. For 300 cycles, we have remained in isolation because our presence brings only terror. We emerge from the dark now because we are dying. Our species cannot survive on fear alone anymore. We came seeking new hunting grounds but found something we did not expect. What did you find? Yunseo's voice was cautious. Hope, Kratos said simply. The humans have shown us that predators can become something else. That fear need not be the only currency of existence. They have a companion animal that feels no fear of us, only joy. We wish to understand this better. Over the next hour, Ambassador Yoon Seo came aboard the station with a small delegation. They walked carefully through the corridors, past the Vareth, who were still examining every corner of human technology with intense curiosity. When Yoon Seo entered the observation deck, she found Captain Taemin's senior staff having coffee, while 3 of the galaxy's most feared predators sat on the floor, taking turns petting Max. The dog was in absolute heaven, making happy groaning sounds while alien claws scratched behind his ears. This is impossible, Yunseo whispered. I thought so too, Taemin agreed. But here we are. Shinra, the younger Vareth, looked up at the ambassador. The human Jiwoo explained that dogs come in many sizes and colors. Is this true? Yes, Yunseo said, still processing the scene. There are hundreds of breeds. We wish to meet them all, Shinra said firmly. Kratos stood, his massive form unfolding. Ambassador, my people have been monsters for too long. We did not choose this. We evolved in darkness, hunting by sensing fear because we had no other way. Over time, we became dependent on terror for sustenance, but we are intelligent beings. We remember a time before we were only predators. He gestured at Max. This creature shows us that change is possible. If wolves can become dogs, if humans can befriend their predators, perhaps we too can become something new. Yunseo looked at Taemin. Do you believe them? Taemin thought about the last several hours. The questions the Vareth had asked. The genuine confusion in their voices when trying to understand concepts like friendship and joy. The careful way they touched Max as if afraid of breaking something precious. Yes, he said. I think they're telling the truth. Then we need to take this to the council, Yunseo said. This changes everything. As the ambassador made arrangements for a formal meeting, Taemin watched Max chase his tail, making all 3 Vareth lean closer with fascination. The ancient predators were trying to understand why the dog would chase part of his own body. Jiwoo stood beside him. You know this is going to change the galaxy, right? We just made first contact with species that everyone thought were... The Galactic Council chamber had never been so quiet. Hundreds of delegates from dozens of species sat in stunned silence as Kratos stood at the speaker's platform. Beside him, sitting perfectly still with his tongue hanging out, was Max Ambassador Yunseo stood nearby, ready to translate if needed, though the Vareth's telepathic voice carried clearly enough. For 10,000 cycles, we have been the darkness you warn your young about, Kratos began. We have been nightmare and death. We have earned your fear, but fear is also our prison. He gestured with one massive claw. We evolved in a region of space where normal senses fail. No light penetrates the dark matter nebula of our home. No sound travels in the void. We developed empathic sensing to hunt, and fear became our only language. It is how we communicate with each other. It is how we navigate. It is what we consume for sustenance. A delegate from the insectoid Chitauri race clicked nervously. You are saying you must cause fear to survive? Yes, but we did not understand this created a cycle we could not escape. The more we fed on fear, the more terrifying we became. Eventually, we could not approach any species without triggering panic. We tried to communicate peacefully once, many cycles ago. Every attempt ended in terror and death. Kratos looked down at Max, who was sniffing his foot. Then we met this creature, this dog. He approached us with no fear. Only curiosity, only joy. For the first time in our entire history, we sensed an emotion that was not terror. We did not know such a thing was possible. Council Speaker Voth leaned forward. What are you proposing, Elder Kratos? Help, Kratos said simply. We are dying. Our species cannot survive on fear alone anymore. We have consumed it for so long that we need more and more to sustain ourselves. We are starving. We came to this region not to conquer, but in desperation. We thought perhaps new species would provide new sources of fear. The chamber erupted in worried murmurs. Several delegates stood to leave. But the humans showed us another way. Kratos continued, his voice cutting through the noise. They showed us that predators can change. They took wolves, apex hunters, and over generations created companions. If they can do this, perhaps we can learn to sense other emotions besides fear. Perhaps we can find sustenance in something besides terror. Yunseo stepped forward. The council should know that humans have been studying Vareth biology for the past week. Dr. Ji Woo-han, would you like to present your findings? Ji Woo approached nervously. She projected holographic images of Vareth brain scans. The Vareth have extremely developed empathic centers. They can sense emotions with incredible precision, but their neural pathways are heavily specialized for fear detection. It's like they have perfect pitch for terror but are tone-deaf to everything else. She pulled up more data. However, when exposed to Max, we detected new neural activity. Pathways that had been dormant started activating. The Vareth can sense other emotions they just never needed to before. With training and exposure, we believed they could learn to feed on positive emotions instead of fear. Positive emotions? A delegate from the aquatic depths people rippled with skepticism. You mean joy, love? These Vareth want to feed on happiness? Not feed exactly, Ji Woo corrected. More like absorb. Like how humans need sunlight for vitamin D. The Vareth need emotional energy. It doesn't have to be fear. That's just what they've always used because it was easiest to generate. Kratos made a sound like grinding stone. The human speaks truth. When I touched the dog's paw, I felt something I cannot describe in any language I know. It was nourishing. Brief but nourishing. If we could learn to sustain ourselves on such feelings, we would never need to hunt again. Taemin stood beside Bora at the back of the chamber. She whispered, Do you think they'll go for it? I don't know. This is asking a lot. These species have feared the Vareth for millennia. That kind of terror doesn't disappear overnight. But Yunseo was prepared. She pulled up historical records. The council should remember that many of our current member species were once considered threats. The Chitauri were raiders before joining. The Depths people were isolationists who attacked any ship that entered their territory. Even humans were viewed with suspicion initially. We have precedent for rehabilitation, but none of those species required emotional energy to survive, Voth pointed out. What you're proposing is unprecedented. You want us to allow the Vareth near our population so they can feed on our emotions? Not immediately, Ji Woo said. We're proposing a trial program. A small group of Vareth would live at a research station with humans and our companion animals. We'd study the process of emotional retraining. If successful, we could develop protocols for safe integration. A human delegate named Do-hyun Kwon stood up. I'm a cultural anthropologist. I've studied Earth's domestication history extensively. What we did with wolves took thousands of years and countless generations. We're talking about conscious transformation here, which might be faster, but it's still going to take time and patience. How much time? Voth asked. Months, maybe years. But consider the alternative. The Vareth are starving. If they can't find a new way to survive, they'll have to hunt again. This time out of genuine desperation. The damage would be catastrophic. The chamber fell silent again. Every delegate understood the unspoken threat. Better to try rehabilitation than face a species fighting for survival with nothing to lose. Finally, Voth spoke. I will allow a vote. All in favor of establishing a trial program for Vareth emotional rehabilitation. The vote was close. Many species abstained, too frightened to commit either way. But enough voted in favor, swayed by the image of Max sitting calmly beside the galaxy's most feared predator. The resolution passed. Over the next month, Threshold 9 was transformed. The monitoring station became Harmony Station, a research facility dedicated to Vareth rehabilitation. A small group of Vareth, including Kratos and Shinra, volunteered to participate. But they needed more than just Max. They needed dozens of companion animals. Earth responded enthusiastically. Ships arrived carrying dogs of every breed, cats, rabbits, even a few parrots. Animal trainers came to help. Xenopsychologists arrived to study the process. The station expanded rapidly. Jaewon Shin, a renowned dog trainer from Seoul, took charge of the program. He was a patient man with decades of experience, but even he was nervous at first. I've trained guard dogs, rescue dogs, therapy dogs, he told Taemin. But I've never trained dogs to help aliens learn to feel happiness. How do I even start? The same way you train any dog, I think, Taemin suggested. With patience and treats. The first formal session was awkward. Jaewon brought 5 different dogs into a room with Kratos and Shinra. The dogs ranged from a tiny Chihuahua named Pepper to a massive Saint Bernard called Mountain. Shinra was fascinated by Mountain. This is also a dog, but it is so much larger than Max. Dogs come in many sizes, Jaewon explained. We bred them for different purposes. Mountain's ancestors were rescue dogs. They saved people trapped in snow. Saved? Shinra tilted her head. Prevented death? Yes. Dogs often protect humans. They warn us of danger. They find people who are lost. They comfort us when we're sad. Kratos rumbled thoughtfully. So the domestication process created beings that actively help their human companions? This was intentional? Some of it was intentional. Some of it just happened because the dogs who were helpful survived better and had more puppies. Over time, helpfulness became part of what dogs are. The training sessions became daily events. Jaewon taught the Vareth how to play fetch, which confused them at first. Why does the human throw the object away if he wants it? Shinra asked. He doesn't want it. The dog wants to bring it back. It's a game. Games are fun. Fun. Shinra tested the word. Like joy, but as an activity? Exactly. Slowly, incredibly, it started working. The Vareth began to sense emotions other than fear. Shinra was especially good at it. She could feel when dogs were happy, excited, or playful. She started responding to their emotions, her movements becoming less threatening, more fluid. One day, Pepper the Chihuahua barked at Shinra. The tiny dog was fearless, yapping at the massive alien like she was just another dog. Shinra froze, then slowly lowered herself to the ground, making herself smaller. Pepper trotted over and licked her face. Shinra made a sound that the translator couldn't interpret at first. Then they realized she was laughing. The first Vareth laugh in recorded history. Kratos progressed more slowly. He was old, his patterns deeply ingrained. But he was determined. He spent hours with Max learning to recognize the subtle differences between various positive emotions. Excitement versus contentment. Playfulness versus curiosity. It is difficult, he admitted to Jiwoo one evening. Fear is sharp and clear. These other emotions are softer, more complex, but also more nourishing. I fed on fear for 10,000 cycles and was always hungry. I spend 1 hour with Max and feel satisfied for days. The breakthrough came during a training session with Mountain. Jaewon was teaching Kratos to throw a ball for the big dog. Kratos' first throw was too hard and the ball sailed over the station's interior wall. Mountain barked happily and chased it anyway, disappearing around a corner. A moment later, he came back with a completely different toy. 6 months after the first contact, Harmony Station had become the most watched location in the galaxy. News crews from 100 worlds sent daily updates. Scientists filed research papers every week. And in the center of it all, Vareth and humans worked together to rewrite what everyone thought was possible. Dr. In-Soo Yang arrived on a cold Tuesday morning. He was a xenopsychology expert from Seoul University. specializing in cross-species emotional development. The council had hired him to assess whether the Vareth transformation was genuine or just an elaborate act. Timon met him at the docking bay. "Welcome to Harmony Station, Doctor. I hope you're ready for something unusual." "I've studied the reports," Insu said, adjusting his glasses. "Frankly, I don't believe most of them. Emotional dependency rewiring takes years in most species. The Vareth have supposedly done it in months. Come see for yourself." They walked through the station's expanded corridors. Through windows, Insu could see training rooms where Vareth and dogs interacted. In one room, Shinra was playing with a corgi named Butter, rolling a ball back and forth. In another, Kratos sat very still while a cat named Ghost climbed all over him, purring loudly. "The cat doesn't fear him at all," Insu observed. "Animals know," Jiwoo said, joining them. "They can sense intention. The Vareth aren't projecting fear anymore. They're trying to project calm." Insu pulled out scanning equipment. "I need to take readings. Neural activity, empathic emissions, biochemical markers. The council needs proof this isn't temporary." Over the next week, Insu conducted extensive tests. He monitored Vareth brain patterns during various interactions. He measured the emotional energy they absorbed and how they processed it. He interviewed every human staff member and examined every dog's behavioral records. One evening, he found Kratos alone in the observation deck, looking out at the stars. "May I join you?" Insu asked. "Please." Kratos' voice was quieter now, less overwhelming. He'd learned to modulate his telepathic projection. Insu sat down. "I need to ask you something directly. Why did you really come out of the dark? The official story is starvation, but I've analyzed your biology. You weren't close to death. You could have survived on fear for another few decades at least." Kratos was silent for a long moment. "You are perceptive, Doctor. The truth is more complicated than hunger." He gestured at the stars. "We were dying, yes, but not from lack of food. We were dying from loneliness. Do you understand what it means to live for 10,000 years and never have a single conversation that isn't predator to prey? Never have a relationship that isn't hunter to hunted?" His many eyes dimmed. "We are intelligent beings. We have art, philosophy, science, but we could never share it with anyone. Every species we met ran from us or fought us. After 300 cycles of isolation, we realized we had two choices: die alone in the dark, or take one last chance to find another way. So you chose to hunt near council space knowing you'd be detected? We chose to test a theory. If the younger species could face us without complete paralysis, perhaps they had evolved past the old fears. Perhaps they could help us. We expected death or war. Instead, we found a dog named Max and a captain who brought him despite regulations." Insu made notes. "Your neural scans show permanent changes. The pathways for fear sensing are atrophying while new emotional centers develop. This is real transformation. It is painful," Kratos admitted, "like learning to see in a new spectrum of light. Everything is overwhelming at first. Joy is so bright. Love is so intense. I understand now why humans write songs and poems about these feelings. They are vast. Do you regret it? The change? Never. For the first time in my existence, I am not defined by what others fear. I am defined by what I choose to become." The next day, Insu presented his findings to a council subcommittee via holographic link. Ambassador Yoon Seo and Do-hyun Kwon attended in person at Harmony Station. "The transformation is genuine," Insu reported. "The Vareth are fundamentally changing their empathic structure. However, this reveals something important. They're not becoming less dangerous by removing their abilities. They're becoming less dangerous by having better options." He displayed brain scans. A Vareth could still generate fear if needed. The capability remains, but they choose not to because they've learned to value other emotions more. This is not domestication in the traditional sense. It's conscious evolution. "Is it sustainable?" a council member asked. "Can they maintain this without constant exposure to companion animals?" Currently, no. They need regular interaction with sources of positive emotion. But over time, as the new neural pathways strengthen, they should need less direct contact. Eventually, they might be able to sustain themselves on ambient emotions from normal social interaction. Yunseo leaned forward. "What are you saying, Doctor?" "I'm saying that if this continues, the Vareth could eventually live among other species without special accommodations. They'd just be another member of the galactic community. The implications hung in the air. Species that had been enemies for millennia could become neighbors. The impossible was becoming merely unlikely. But Do-hyun raised an important question. What about the rest of the Vareth? The ones still in the dark matter nebula? There are thousands of them. Maybe millions. We can't rehabilitate an entire species with dogs and patients. We don't have to, Jiwoo said. She pulled up genetic data. Shinra was born during the program. She never fully developed the fear dependency that older Vareth have. She learned to sense joy first. Her neural structure is completely different from Kratos' generation. You're saying the next generation will be naturally adapted? Hyunseo asked. Exactly. If we can help enough Vareth make the transition, their children will be born already capable of sensing positive emotions. Within a few generations, fear-feeding could become obsolete. Insu nodded. The Vareth reproduce slowly, but they live for millennia. We're not looking at a quick fix. This is a multi-generational project, but it's possible. That night, the senior staff gathered in the station's common room. Max was asleep on the couch, his head in Taemin's lap. Other dogs dozed around the room. Through the window, they could see Kratos and Shinra in the garden with several cats. I still can't believe this is real, Bora said. 6 months ago, I was sure they'd kill us all. Now I watch Kratos give belly rubs to cats. Culture can change faster than biology sometimes, Do-hyun said. The Vareth are choosing to be different. That's powerful. Jae-won came in carrying a tired-looking corgi. Butter fell asleep during training again. Shinra was devastated. She thinks she's boring. Everyone laughed. The idea of a Vareth warrior worried about being boring to a corgi was absurd and wonderful. Jiwoo looked thoughtful. You know what I find most interesting? The Vareth keep asking about other species, not just about dogs and cats. They want to know if other aliens might also transform. If there are other monsters out there who just need a different option. That's actually not a bad question, Insu said. The galaxy is full of species that don't interact well with others. Not because they're evil, but because of evolutionary mismatches. The Vareth project proves that with effort and understanding, bridges can be built. Sung-ho, who had been quiet, spoke up. I got a message today from the Chitari delegation. They want to visit. They have questions about domestication. Apparently they have a species on their homeworld that they've always feared, but never tried to understand. They're wondering if the human approach might work for them. See? Jiwoo smiled. This is bigger than just the Vareth. We're showing the galaxy that the predator-prey dynamic isn't permanent. That fear isn't destiny. Taemin scratched Max behind the ears. The dog stretched without waking up. All because I broke regulations and brought my dog to a diplomatic mission. Best regulation violation in galactic history, Yunseo said. Though please don't make a habit of it. A chime sounded. Heejin checked her tablet. We have incoming ships. It's another group of Vareth. 20 of them. They're requesting permission to join the program. Everyone looked at each other. The station was already crowded. They'd need more space, more trainers, more dogs. Accept their request, Taemin said. We'll figure out the logistics. If they're asking for help, we need to provide it. Over the next month, the station expanded again. More Vareth arrived. More humans volunteered. Ships came from Earth carrying every kind of companion animal imaginable. A delegation of young Vareth approached Jae-won with an unusual request. They wanted to learn how to train dogs themselves. Not just interact with them, but understand the training process. We wish to return to our people eventually, their spokesperson explained. When we do, we'll need to teach others what we learned. If we understand how humans train companions, perhaps we can adapt those methods for our own species. Jae-won agreed, and suddenly Harmony Station had its first Vareth dog trainers in training. It was strange and wonderful and sometimes chaotic, but it worked. Kratos spent time with Insu, discussing Vareth culture and history. He shared things that had never been recorded before. Art from the Dark Ages. Philosophy developed over millennia of isolation. Dreams of what they might become. 1 year after Max first wagged his tail at the galaxy's most feared predators, Harmony Station looked nothing like the small monitoring outpost it once was. The facility had grown into a sprawling complex, part research center, part training academy, part miracle in progress. Jae-won stood in Training Hall 3, watching something that would have been unthinkable a year ago. A young Vareth named Shinra was teaching a class on basic dog training to a mixed group of humans and 3 other Vareth. Butter the corgi demonstrated the commands while Shinra explained the principles. The key is consistency and positive reinforcement, Shinra said, her telepathic voice now perfectly modulated. Dogs want to please their companions. When they succeed, you celebrate with them. This joy becomes shared between you. An older Vareth named Talcor raised a claw. But what if the dog does not understand the command? Then you try again with more patience. Anger and frustration only create fear. We do not want fear anymore, remember? Talcor nodded slowly. Like all the older Vareth, he was still adjusting. Breaking 10,000 years of instinct took time. But he was trying, and that was what mattered. After the class, Jaewon approached Shinra. You're a natural teacher. Have you thought about what you'll do after the program? I want to go to the nebula, Shinra said firmly. There are thousands of my people still living in the dark. They need to know that another way exists. But I'm scared. What if they reject the change? What if they choose to remain hunters? Then you'll have tried, Jaewon said gently. That's all any of us can do. Show them the possibility and let them choose. Shinra looked down at Butter, who was sniffing her feet. This small creature changed my entire existence. She will never know how important she is. How do humans live with such profound responsibility? We try not to think about it too much, Jaewon admitted with a smile. We just love them and hope that's enough. Across the station, Taemin was giving a tour to a documentary filmmaker named Subin Oh. Her team had been recording the transformation process for the past 6 months, creating a film that would be distributed across the galaxy. This is the socialization wing, Taemin explained as they walked through a corridor lined with windows. Through each window, different species interacted. Vareth with dogs, Vareth with cats, Vareth with human children, supervised carefully but playing together nonetheless. How many Vareth have gone through the program now? Subin asked, her camera crew following. 217, and we have another 100 waiting. The demand is incredible, but we can only process so many at a time. Each Vareth needs months of training before they're ready. They entered a large common room where several Vareth sat with humans, watching a movie together. It was a nature documentary about wolves and their evolution into dogs. One Vareth, whose name translated roughly as whisper, was completely absorbed. The humans spent 15,000 years on this process. Such patience. We didn't know we were doing anything special, a human named Minjung replied. We just wanted companions, friends. The transformation happened slowly over so many generations that no one really noticed until it was done. But you kept records, Whisper said. You studied the process. You understand how predators become partners. This knowledge is why we came to you. The movie ended and discussion began. It was something that happened every evening now. Mixed groups of humans and Vareth talking about evolution, domestication, and change. Sharing stories. Building understanding. Jiwoo found Taemin later in his office. She looked excited. I just got the data back from the genetic analysis. You need to see this. She pulled up charts on his screen. Remember how we thought the next generation of Vareth would be naturally adapted to positive emotions? It's happening faster than we predicted. Shinra isn't just different from older Vareth. She's showing genetic changes. Her empathic centers have completely restructured. Is that possible in one generation? For Vareth, apparently yes. Their genetic structure is more plastic than most species. They evolved in such a hostile environment that rapid adaptation was necessary for survival. Now that plasticity is working in our favor. If this continues, the Vareth species could transform completely in just 3 or 4 generations. That's incredible. It is. But there's more. Other species are taking notice. We've received inquiries from 17 different civilizations asking about the program. They want to know if the same process could work for their problem species. Taemin leaned back in his chair. We're going to need a bigger station. That night, the Galactic Council convened for a special session. Ambassador Yunseo presented the findings from Harmony Station to the full assembly. For 1 year, we have watched the impossible become reality, she began. The Vareth, our ancient enemy, have become our partners in building a better galaxy. But this is about more than one species. This is about changing how we think about conflict itself. She displayed footage from the station. Vareth playing with dogs. Vareth teaching humans about their culture. Vareth children laughing with human children. The humans showed us something we forgot. That predator and prey, monster and victim, enemy and friend. These are not permanent states. They are choices. Roles we play until we choose to play different ones. Council Speaker Voth clicked thoughtfully. You are proposing what exactly, Ambassador? I propose we establish the Interspecies Emotional Exchange Program, a galaxy-wide initiative to bridge gaps between incompatible species. We start with knowledge from the Vareth project and expand it. Any species can participate, either as helpers or as those seeking help. The proposal passed with overwhelming support. The galaxy was ready for change. 3 months later, the first expansion facilities opened. One near Chitauri space, where they began working with their feared predator species. One in the depths region, where aquatic species learned to communicate with land dwellers through shared emotional experiences. One in human space, where Earth became the center of companion animal diplomacy. Kratos chose to stay at Harmony Station as its director. His 10,000 years of experience made him uniquely qualified to guide other Vareth through their transformation. But more than that, he had found purpose. I spent millennia as a hunter, he told Taman one day. I thought that was my destiny. But it was only my beginning. Here, surrounded by companions and friends, I finally understand what I was meant to become. Max, now famous across 1,000 worlds, took his celebrity in stride, which meant he completely ignored it and continued being himself. His favorite activity was still greeting new arrivals with enthusiastic tail wags. When the first group of young Vareth returned from the nebula, bringing their own people to see Harmony Station, Max greeted them exactly as he greeted everyone. With joy, curiosity, and absolute faith that anyone he met would be a friend. The newcomers were terrified at first. The station, the lights, the other species. Everything was overwhelming. But then they saw the Vareth who had transformed. Saw them playing with dogs, laughing with humans, living without fear or hunger. One ancient Vareth, older even than Kratos, approached Max cautiously. The dog sat and offered his paw. The ancient one took it gently. "What is your name, small creature?" the elder asked. Max just wagged his tail. He didn't need to understand the question to know the right answer was always friendliness. "His name is Max," Shinra explained. "He was the first. The one who showed us that change was possible." The elder looked at Max for a long moment, then looked at the transformed Vareth, at the humans working alongside them, at the impossible garden growing in the darkness. "I lived 15,000 cycles believing we were cursed," the elder said quietly, "that we were born to be monsters and would die as monsters. But this creature, this Max, he does not see monsters. He sees only friends he has not yet met." "That is what humans teach their companions," Kratos said, "to see beyond fear. To choose connection over isolation. They offered us that same teaching and we were wise enough to accept. Over the next year, more Vareth came. Some embraced the change immediately. Others took longer. A few, the oldest and most set in their ways, chose to return to the nebula. The program did not force anyone. Change had to be chosen freely or it would not last. But most stayed. Most learned. Most transformed. And with each Vareth who learned to sense joy instead of fear, the galaxy became a little bit lighter, a little bit safer, a little bit more whole. The Galactic Unity Festival was held 2 years after first contact. Representatives from every member species gathered on a neutral world. The event celebrated peace, cooperation, and the bridges built between impossible divides. Taemin attended with Max, of course. They walked through crowds of thousands of beings from hundreds of worlds. Many wanted to meet the famous dog. Max graciously allowed everyone to pet him. Shinra was there too, now a full ambassador for her people. Butter trotted beside her, wearing a small ceremonial vest that marked her as a companion diplomat. Other Vareth mingled with the crowds, some with their own companion animals, others simply enjoying the diversity of emotion around them. A young human child, maybe 6 years old, approached Shinra nervously. "Are you really a Vareth? The scary ones from stories?"